In this video, I want to talk about a fascinating theory called object relations. Let's get into it. Hello, my name is James Taylor. I'm an online counsellor, hypnotherapist, life coach, hypnotherapy supervisor. I'm also an author, a podcaster, and a YouTuber. Now, what is object relations? Well, let's go right back to Sigmund Freud. Sigmund Freud, one of his theories, was that to be a fully functioning adult, which he said was 18 years of age, to be fully functioning, you had to go through these different stages of development, and if you successfully completed these stages of development, by the time you turned 18, you were good to go and face the world. Now, you've got to think about the time Sigmund Freud was alive and speaking about this kind of thing. Now, there was a German-American psychoanalyst called Erik Erikson, and he went along with this to a degree, with a slight variation. He said, I agree we go through different stages of development. I agree that to be a fully functioning person, we need to complete these stages of development. But where I disagree, I don't think it's from 0 to 18. I think it's from 0 until death. And I'm more in that camp, that we're always going through a stage of development. Now, when Sigmund Freud started talking about object relations, it could be anything at all. It could be a tree, a camera, a shirt, it could be anything. But when it really started changing and becoming more beneficial for therapy was when object relations related to a person and just a person. So I'm going to give you a bit of an example. Suppose you've got a baby living in a house, and let's say there's mum and there's dad and there's brother and a sister and there's one grandparent. Okay? Those 5 people for this theory are objects. Mum's an object, dad is, brother, sister and grandparent. They're all objects. Now, as the child from birth begins to become aware of its surroundings and become self-conscious, if you like, it starts to notice what these objects or how these objects operate, and it will start to copy and emulate what these objects do. Now, not only will the child start to copy what these objects do, it will start to learn and behave in a certain way and listen to how these objects interact with each other and also what these objects say about themselves. Now, even if they don't understand the words, they can pick up on the tonality. So if someone's very angry, the child's going to become aware of anger. If the child is told they're no good, they're going to start to believe they're no good. And when you think about it from a very logical point of view, a small child will look at older adults and potentially be thinking, well, you're so old and so wise and know everything. You must be correct in what you're thinking and saying about me. You see the danger? Because when we're a young child, we have no filter to be able to decide to accept or reject an idea. It just all comes in. And that's a blessing and a curse because it's how we learn. Now, what happens is that the child will then learn potentially not very good coping mechanisms if a negative situation arises. So let's expand this scenario a little bit. Let's say the child grows up and every time dad gets stressed, he gets really, really angry. Okay? Now, the child will then learn, but when you get stressed, you get really, really angry. That's how you respond to stress. So if the child doesn't learn any better, as the child gets older, whenever the child gets stressed and is now an adult, whenever the child gets stressed, their immediate response could be anger. Okay. It doesn't have to be, but it can be because the object, their father, behaved in a certain way that taught them a lesson about how to behave in that thing. Okay. Now, me and you are a product of all the objects that we've experienced in our lives. Now, when a client comes to you and you're the therapist, inadvertently, you become an object to the client for this theory. So a beneficial thing that you can do you can ensure you're a good object. So that means you give the client space to be able to talk. You give them autonomy. You give them freedom. You give them reassurance. You give them understanding. You give them your ear. You use all your therapy skills to provide this safe environment for the client to be able to just spill what they're really thinking, even if it's the thing that they would never to let anyone else outside that room know they feel, but they can tell you. And if you are able to manage that yourself, you then become a very positive object for the client, which is incredibly beneficial. Now, we also tend to model or emulate other people. You see this in fashion all the time. As celebrity wears a certain style of clothing, it becomes very popular, and then loads of people start buying that kind of clothing, or designer footwear, or an object, or a TV, or whatever it might, the latest iPhone, whatever it might be. People have a tendency to emulate or copy other people. So if you are an object to the client, and you're stable, and you're calm, and you're reassuring to the client, then you become a very, very positive object for them, and they can potentially start to emulate your style when coping with different things. Now, an important thing to note about this, with object relations, it's not an intellectual conversation. It's going much deeper than that. So if you're the client if you're the therapist and the client is keeping it very intellectual, and I've mentioned on one of my videos about when to challenge clients, and I'll put a link for that up here. But if the client's preference is to stay in the intellectual zone, well, therapy is not about intellectual thoughts. I would suggest it's more about the emotional thoughts. Now, what you might find, perhaps, is if a client feels safe in the intellectual zone, and let's say the emotional zone is unsafe for them, then they may struggle if you're encouraging them to go to the place that they don't want to go to. There's a quote, it's one of my favourite quotes, and it's, "The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek." And I've actually said that to clients before myself. If I find a client is wanting to stay in an intellectual place, I will remind the clients that, we've agreed to talk about things that are bothering you, things that are holding you back. And we can stay in talking about this, but that's really not what the therapy is about. The therapy is about, what are you thinking and what are you feeling? And how's that impacting on your day, on your week, on your month, on your life, on your relationships, on your work? So it's that gentle encouragement to get the client to go from intellectual to emotional. So object relations therapy, fascinating area, and it's such rich material, because as the rapport is built up between you and the client, and the trust is built up, and you're modelling good behaviour at your side, and the client is able to see that they're accepted and they are enough. That's a big one. They are enough, because some of your clients might think they're no good. They're not worth anything. They've been told their entire life by their caregivers that they're not worth anything. They're nothing but trouble, whatever it might be. And here's you being professional and educated and assisting them through an emotional journey. It's fantastic. So, a fantastic area to get into, and I would encourage you to do your own study in this. This is only the tip of the iceberg when it comes to object relations. But in future videos, I'm going to be talking about some tools that you can use in therapy that are similar to object relations, just coming at it from a different dynamic. Alright, so if you'd like to see that, please put a yes in the comments below. So that's all for this week's episode of Therapy Business School. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please give me a like, a share and a subscribe. I ask this on every video, and the reason I ask it is it tells YouTube this channel is worth sharing to other people, and it'll do so. And likewise, if you know anyone who might benefit from this channel, where I talk all things therapy, and I'll assist you as best I can. And I've also got some news coming up, but that'll be in the next episode. All right, I've got lots of things that I want to share, lots of things that I want to talk about. But you know, this is a series of course meal. It's not one big thing on a plate. So you'll have to stick around and wait for that. So I hope you've enjoyed this one. My name is James Taylor. This is Therapy Business School, and I'll say bye.